Oh, hello. My name is Mara and welcome to Books Like Whoa. So I've got a little book tag action for you guys today. I am doing my Bookish Boxes and Buzzwords book tag. That was so much alliteration. That was originally created by Lizzie Faye Loves Books. And I must have just missed this when she did it, but she is the co-founder of March Mystery Madness. She's a lovely lady. You should definitely check her channel out. But she created this tag, and a Book Olive actually did it and tagged me to do it as well. And when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, this is so fun. I should definitely do this. I love Olive for many reasons. She is, I feel like, one of the kind of reigning queens of nonfiction here on BookTube. And I also love the fact that ever since YouTube has started, you know, when you're scrolling through your feed, and if you pause a little bit on a video, it will start giving you subtitles that it thinks are correct for what the person's saying. Every time Olive's goes by, it says, her actual opening tag is, "Hi guys, Olive here," but it subtitles as, "Hi guys, I live here." And I just feel like it's such a weird flex of like, hey guys, I live here. It just, every time that makes me laugh. It's like, geez, okay, Olive, I get it. You're not in a hotel. You're not like in someone else's house. You're in your own home. Like, don't get so aggressive about this. I don't even know what this is about. But anyway, yeah, that cracks me up every single time I go by, and she's just great, and it was very kind of her to tag me, so let's dive in. Okay, so the first question is your go-to genre or favorite type of book. And this is so hard for me because if you guys watch me, you know that I am like an omnivore. I read it all. I think, and looking at these questions, we'll start getting into this. I think that probably the way to describe my favorite type of books is books that have a mystery plot. So they don't have to be mystery genre novels, but I find that the best plot engine for me is a mystery, and that is what I'm most drawn to in books. So be it literary fiction, historical fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, romance, like any genre wrapping of it, I like the actual plot to be a mystery plot. I actually even find that that translates somewhat to nonfiction in terms of some of the types of narrative nonfiction that I like. But yeah, I think that that would probably be the closest thing I could tell you is my favorite. Number two are retellings that you're drawn to. I would say, first of all, I'm drawn to retellings just period. I really like that as a project, and when I find one that works for me, I really enjoy it. In terms of like what standard kind of thing that will draw me in is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I'm a sucker for it. I love it. You particularly see a lot of these in either romance or fantasy, but I've seen a couple of like mystery type ones that have kind of used some of those tropes. Yeah, I'm a sucker for it. I love a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Number three is lifestyles or careers of book characters. And I realized when I was thinking about this that it's somewhat genre specific. So like, for instance, in a mystery, I definitely don't usually love a journalist or like a PI as my main character. I tend to prefer either like a detective or a family member related to the situation as my kind of way into the story. Whereas in a contemporary romance, I'll often enjoy like the medical profession, because often I find that means that the heroines are not too stupid to live. They tend to have like their own careers. I like that. Or I really like it when the heroines have sort of like non-traditionally female professions. So like I really love it when the heroine like has her own construction company, or we don't see this much, but I would be so down for more heroes to have non-traditionally masculine careers. Like we do get a lot of like chefs and bakers, so like men who cook, which I think is less and less a gendered thing. But I would love to see it like a male nurse or something as the hero. Anyway, so I kind of like that as careers or settings in my contemporary romances. In fantasy, this is a totally random thing, but I'm always a sucker when somebody's like an herbologist or like an herb healer, like like a fantasy, ye old fantasy version of a doctor tends to be a good choice for me in fantasy, as opposed to like a warrior. Anyway, a lot of times in any genre book, I just will like something that's a little bit off the beaten path and not what we normally get in that genre. Number four is places or settings you are drawn to. I would say in fiction in general, so again, it just depends on the genre, but I tend to like a more, well, actually, now that I think about this, in most genres, I tend to prefer more like rural settings or like quaint country settings of some type. over urban ones. There's definitely exceptions to that. Like there's certain types of novels that I think work, like if it's a certain type of plot, I think some of those will work better in a city. So like I tend to prefer a police procedural more in a city often than in a small town. There's definitely exceptions to that. But I would say in general, I probably prefer kind of like a cozier setting. And I would also say that in general, I prefer a fantasy or a magical setting over our world. All things being equal, I would like a dose of magic thrown in. Or I guess maybe just even otherness, because I also really enjoy like historical set novels. So anything that's basically not contemporary tends to be probably what I would prefer. Number 5 is relationships you enjoy reading about. I would say that like family relationships are probably my favorite type of relationship to read about. I really enjoy, and again, broken record here, it depends on sort of like what type of book we're talking about, but like in a YA, I really enjoy seeing a family, like some sort of the family dynamic being at play or at stake. I really like in a lot of contemporary books, I enjoy sort of like a communal setting, so like a kind of found or extended family dynamics. It's strange because you would think I might say romance, because I definitely do really like a romantic element in most books that I read. Like I'd rather have it there than not in general. But it's usually, I'm less interested, I just realized this, I'm usually less interested in the actual two people coming together, and it's usually more interesting to me to see like their worlds colliding, including the people in it. So like, yeah, I'm a nosy bitch, and I just am interested in people. So I really like observing how people's close, intimate relationships work. And I enjoy that in nonfiction and in fiction. So maybe where I'm landing on this is like any relationship, because like I'm just generally really interested in interpersonal dynamics in books. Like that's a crucial part of me enjoying a book. The next one is buzzwords that draw you in a book, like in the title. And it's kind of hard. Anything that is like murder at or murder in, where the implication is that like there is a setting and that there's going to be a murder there that everybody in that setting is going to work together to solve, that draws me in. And then really just any kind of keyword that's going to let me know that there's some sort of like magical-y thing happening, or like potential for there to be magic, like that usually will get me too. But yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't think I'm very conscious, at least, of a lot of biases in that respect. The next question is about things on the cover that draw you in. Well, it's actually kind of just a mirror of what I was saying in terms of the words. In terms of the things on the actual cover that will intrigue me, if I see like a lone house, that usually is intriguing to me. If I see something that indicates like that there's somebody who is magical, so like lightning coming out of your fingers, or like some sort of ye old fantasy costume, like that might intrigue me. If it's a romance, oh my gosh, I have a lot of feelings about romance covers, but like if there's gonna be two people, I do not want them to be naked, and I want them to be tastefully intertwined if they're gonna do that. But on a romance novel, I definitely prefer a more abstract cover. So I mean, as much shit as we give the 50 Shades of Grey series, I do appreciate that they brought a more like object oriented or like different take on a romance novel cover. And since then we've had a lot more of those. So I like that. But yeah, just in general, I like a cover that conveys a mood, and that I can clearly read what that mood is from the cover, so that I can figure out if I want to read it. Okay, number 8 is nonfiction buzzwords, the type of nonfiction you're drawn to. I mean, I am drawn to a pretty wide range of nonfiction. Like there's not a lot that I would say is just like totally out of my wheelhouse. I would say that I tend to be less drawn to true blue science nonfiction, unless it's a topic I'm very interested in. So like all of Gary Taubes's books about nutrition, like that I'm interested in. So like I like the sciencey parts of that. But like in general, I would say usually my way into nonfiction is some kind of either history or personal story. So like I would be much more likely to read a history of science than I would be to read like a true, like the actual like rundown of a specific scientific topic in general. I also really like current events and like political nonfiction, or like personal essays kind of relating to those sorts of macro ideas. I really like that. I like philosophy. I haven't read as much philosophy in the last couple of years, but like historically, I have read a lot of philosophy, so I do really like that. Yeah, I really like a lot of different kinds of nonfiction, and I think narrative nonfiction done really well is a real skill and something that I have a lot of admiration for. So maybe that's one that I'm always on the lookout for, of like really good narrative nonfiction. Number 9 is any medical or physical conditions of characters that you look for. And I can't say that I especially have anything like that. Yeah, I guess for me, this is sort of a non-starter. I will say, just like as a general principle, I always find it really interesting to read about characters who are like differently abled or who have some sort of medical condition. I really enjoy that, especially if it's own voices. So it's something that would be like, the existence of that element would make me excited about a book, but I don't necessarily have a specific condition that would intrigue me. And then number 10 is time of year or a time in history or future that you were drawn to. In terms of history, like historical time period, I mean, it's kind of all of it. So like some notable ones in the recent past that I've gotten like down the rabbit hole on. I'm very intrigued by like Watergate and the whole like Nixon era, as well as sort of the build up to it. So like some of the stuff in the 60s, I like to read about that. I've spent a lot of time in the last few years reading about sort of the evolution of gender roles in England and the US from probably about like 1820 to 1970 or 80. So that was a period that I read a lot about. When I was in grad school, I spent a lot of time reading about ancient history. So a lot about especially the ancient Roman culture. I also spent a lot of time, I was a graduate teaching assistant. So like the topic I was teaching on was like the history of Christianity. So pretty much that whole thing, like I spent a lot of time thinking about that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm a history nerd. So like it's pretty hard to find a part of history that I would not be interested to read about, to be totally honest with you. And then there's 2 bonus questions. So the first one is any other bookish boxes or buzzwords not already mentioned. I would say that like to sum up what I look for in a book is the best kind of book for me is going to have a fantasy setting, a mystery plot, and some kind of romantic element in it. If a book has 2 of those, I'm probably really gonna like it. If it has all 3, I'm gonna love it, unless it's not done well. But like that is really what I am drawn to, I have found, especially since I started doing the Know Your Trope series and having to kind of articulate what I like in books. I think that that's kind of what I've honed in on as like, those are the 3 elements I'm really looking for. And then finally, what bookish boxes or buzzwords turn you away from a book? I would say there's no definitive thing that it's like, I would never read this. Things that I'm less likely to read are things that are purely driven by the writing. So like some kinds of literary fiction where really the main thing that's going on is like, this is beautiful prose and there's almost no plot or like no real character development other than like an intense navel gaze. Like I definitely have ones where I do like I definitely have had examples where I like that, but that's a harder sell for me. There's just certain tropes in different genres that I read that are harder sell. Like, I think I mentioned earlier, it's harder for me to be on board with like a kind of noir detective type mystery. Like that doesn't tend to be what I really like in the mystery genre. I really don't like, an enemies to lover trope usually in romance, which I know makes me the minority. Everybody loves those, but that doesn't tend to be my favorite. I don't tend to love kind of what I call basic bitch fantasy, which is just sort of like a generic medieval setting, a generic chosen one plot. Like that usually isn't going to do a whole lot for me. Yeah, so I think it just sort of varies, but all of those have exceptions to them because yeah, it just depends on how well the author sells it to me. Thank you again to Olive for tagging me. Thank you to Lizzie for creating this tag. And I enjoy doing it. Got to do a little introspection on my own taste. So who doesn't love that? I'm sure this was great content. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below. And I think that will do it. I hope you're having a really lovely day and I will just talk to you soon. Bye.